Welcome to This Explainer. We're cracking a case today that literally frustrates anyone who loves a fresh gel manicure. You absolutely know the feeling. You sit in the chair, pick out the perfect shade, the application looks completely flawless, and then boom. Days later, it's peeling up at the edges. It is so maddening. But today, we're going on a mission to uncover the biological mystery behind gel polish lifting. We're going to dive into the science, the chemistry, and the real physiological reasons why your manicure just won't stick. Let's get right into it.
So, let me ask you a question. Does your brand new fresh set of gel polish start lifting in just 3 to 5 days? Because if you're nodding your head right now, I really need you to hear this. The problem isn't your salon. It's definitely not that expensive brand of polish you're using. And honestly, it's not your nail tech's fault either. If you're experiencing failure this early, the issue is actually your biology.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a really clear roadmap today to cure this frustrating issue once and for all. We'll uncover the hidden cause of lifting, diagnose your specific nail type, walk through the layered prep solution, talk about primer and biology, and then we'll wrap up with aftercare and advanced fixes.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the hidden cause of lifting, where we'll look closely at keratin and sebum.
Now, to really understand why your polish is peeling, we have to look at the nail bed not just as a canvas, but as a living, biological patient. Your nail plate is this porous structure made of keratin layers, and right underneath it is the nail bed, which is constantly secreting oil to keep those keratin layers supple, flexible, and healthy. I mean, without this oil, our nails would just snap and become incredibly brittle. But there's a catch. Because of that oil secretion, we run into a major issue with how gel polish actually bonds. See, gel polish relies on 2 types of bonding to stay on your nail. First, there's mechanical adhesion, where the base coat physically grips all those tiny microtextures on the keratin surface. And second, chemical adhesion, where the formula of the base coat interacts directly with the clean keratin on a molecular level. But what happens when you have a naturally oily nail bed? Well, that active oil production creates this microscopic layer of oil right between the keratin and the base coat. It completely destroys both of those bonding mechanisms. It's exactly like trying to stick a piece of Scotch tape to a greasy frying pan. It just slides right off. No way is it sticking to that.
There's a crucial point to remember here. The base coat bonds to the oil rather than to the nail, and oil is not a stable adhesive surface. This right here is exactly why standard prep just doesn't cut it for naturally oily nail beds. Sure, a quick alcohol wipe at the salon removes the visible oil, but it leaves behind a residual film. And as your nail plate naturally shifts and moves, that highly unstable layer of oil moves right along with it, taking your gorgeous gel polish right off.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, diagnosing your nail type.
Before we treat the problem, we've got to make sure we're treating the right disease, right? Not all lifting is caused by oily nail beds, so we need to look out for some very specific symptoms. What's really interesting here is how oily nail beds leave a highly recognizable pattern of failure, because the cuticle and the sidewalls are where the skin and the nail plate are in the absolute closest contact. Well, that's exactly where fresh oil migrates the fastest. So oily lifting almost always starts there. Furthermore, the gel will look like it had a completely clean release from the nail. It peels away in one piece rather than chipping or cracking. And finally, you are going to see this most frequently on your index finger and your thumb. Why? Simply because those fingers have the highest mechanical activity, which just exacerbates that unstable, oily bond.
But hey, let's quickly clarify what is not an oily nail bed issue, just so you can definitively rule out bad application or heavy wear. If your gel holds strong for a week and then starts lifting after day 7, oily nail beds are probably not your primary culprit. That kind of timing points way more toward mechanical stress, like aggressively hitting your nails on a keyboard or just standard free edge wear. And if your gel is peeling off in massive, thick, rubbery sheets rather than cleanly lifting at the edges, that points directly to undercured, overly thick layers of polish, not oil.
Okay, now for the really good stuff. Section 3, the layered prep solution.
If you've diagnosed yourself with oily nail beds, standard prep is officially out the window. We are replacing basic advice with a definitive, step-by-step rescue plan that is driven entirely by chemistry and very strict timing. Here is the exact sequence to build a totally bulletproof foundation. First up, wash your hands with mild soap and let them air dry for a full 5 minutes. Seriously, 5 minutes. Even if they feel dry, residual moisture hides deep in the nail plate. Next, give it a light buff with a 220 grit file to create microtexture and remove surface keratin cells. Third, wipe firmly with 70 to 90% isopropyl alcohol and let it evaporate for 60 seconds without blowing on it. Yes, I know it's incredibly tempting to blow on them to speed it up, but your breath has moisture. Step 4 is absolutely critical. Use a dedicated nail dehydrator, but, and this is key, for oily nails, you must do 2 passes. The first pass takes off the bulk of the oil, and the second pass grabs the oil that started sneaking back up during pass 1. Finally, step 5, immediate base coat application.
And when I say immediate, I literally mean immediate. You have a ticking clock of just 2 to 3 minutes. That is exactly how long the dehydrating effect lasts before your biology kicks back in and those natural nail oils begin rushing back to the surface. This is exactly why you cannot prep all 10 fingers and then casually start painting. You must work nail by nail. Dehydrate one nail, let it evaporate, prime it, apply the base coat, and cure it. Every single second counts here.
Which brings us to Section 4, Primer and Biology, looking specifically at the impact of hormones and seasons. So, we've talked about dehydrators, but there is a missing chemical link in our solution. Plus, we really need to understand how our own bodies constantly change the rules of the game throughout the year. Let's define our terms clearly to understand why the very next step is so important. A nail dehydrator acts as the initial clearing sweep of the nail plate. It simply removes oil and moisture. But its key limitation is right there in the definition. It creates a temporarily clean, dry surface. It doesn't build anything, it literally only takes away.
So the crucial point is understanding how this contrasts with a nail primer. A primer creates a permanent chemical bonding layer between that freshly cleaned nail surface and the base coat. It forms its own molecular connection directly to the keratin. Now, for someone with average nails, a temporary dehydrator alone is often totally fine. But for oily nail beds, an acid-free primer is absolutely non-negotiable. It is the transformative step that provides a second, permanent layer of adhesion that simply doesn't rely on oil to stick.
And here's the thing. You actually have to adapt these chemical tools to what your body is doing. Think about how hormonal fluctuations and even the weather constantly conspire against your manicure. Heat naturally increases sweat and oil production everywhere, and yep, that includes your nail beds. It's actually wild. The sources point out that even in moderate climates like during a UK summer, oil production spikes enough that a manicure strategy that was working perfectly in the winter will suddenly just fail in July. The exact same thing goes for hormonal shifts. Whether it's your menstrual cycle, changes in birth control, or pregnancy, these genuinely affect your sebaceous glands. During those high oil phases, your prep absolutely must adapt. A double dehydrator plus a primer becomes essential.
Finally, let's step into Section 5, Aftercare and Advanced Fixes, so we can really lock this in. Okay, so you've nailed the chemistry and the timing of the application. Now we have to focus on the long game. I'm talking about the daily habits required to lock this chemical solution in place. These strict aftercare rules are vital because everyday products can act as silent assassins to your gel's foundation. First up, keep hand cream completely off the nail plate. Hand cream leaves an invisible residue. Even if you just put it on your skin, it migrates to the nail perimeter and slowly, sneakily works its way under the gel. The same exact rule goes for cuticle oil. Apply it to the skin only, never ever directly on the gel itself. And perhaps most importantly, wear rubber gloves for wet work, like washing dishes. Hot water literally causes your natural nail plate to expand. Then, as it cools and dries, it contracts. That thermal expansion-contraction cycle violently stresses the gel bond, significantly accelerating lifting for oily nail types. Now, what if you do absolutely everything right? You do the double prep, the primer, the nail-by-nail application, you wear the gloves, and you still have persistent lifting? Well, there are some advanced clinical fixes. First, definitely check your UV or LED lamp. Lamp output degrades over time, usually after about 18 months of regular use, which leads to a dangerously undercured base. Next, assess if your nail plate is thinned out from past aggressive removals. Thin nails let oil rise to the surface so much faster. If all else fails, it's time to upgrade to a BAIV, or a builder gel overlay. A builder gel creates a much thicker, more robust adhesion platform directly on the primed nail plate. It gives you a solid barrier that your color gel polish can grip onto really securely.
Which leaves us with one final thought. The next time your fresh manicure starts peeling on day 4, what are you going to do? Will you endlessly chase a new magic brand of polish? Or will you change your prep? Oily nail bed lifting is entirely fixable, for sure. It just requires acknowledging your biology, mastering the layered chemistry of dehydrators and primers, and strictly managing that clock. Armed with this science, you are absolutely ready to make that manicure last. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.